That's it.
Any excuse to go play sports, I would take. I played soccer at a really young age. I played t-ball, moved into baseball for a couple of years. At 4 years old, I was playing hockey and have been playing ever since. When I was born, my leg never fully developed. It was about 3/4 the length of my other leg. My foot never fully developed. I didn't grow all my toes. And my foot was angled off about 30 degrees to the left. So there was really no way that with my leg not fully developing for me to be able to walk and play sports like my parents had hoped. They talked to several doctors here in Calgary. They flew out to Toronto to talk to specialists out there. And they ended up coming back to Calgary and going to the Children's Hospital and meeting with Dr. Harder. And he more or less told them that you have two options, but you really only have one option. If you want your child to live as normal a life as possible, you amputate his leg.
I'm swimming 7 times a week in the pool, about 1.5 to 2 hours each time. I was premature and I had a stroke at birth, which caused a lack of oxygen going to my brain. Cerebral palsy affects mostly the left side of my body. I spent a lot of time at the Children's and made relationships with doctors, physiotherapists, occupational therapists. They made a big impact on my life in a very positive way. Because I was doing physiotherapy, it was a requirement to do 15 minutes every day, and I hated it. And anything I could do to get out of it, I would. My parents, they encouraged a physical activity. My mom drove me to a swimming rookie camp, and at my next checkup, I was 11 years old, and they said that if I continued with swimming, that would take the place of the physio because the physiotherapy and swimming were doing the same thing for my leg.
I was born in Medicine Hat, Alberta, and I grew up most of my life in the middle of nowhere, Birstall, Saskatchewan, a town of like 450 people, if you include dogs, probably too. Life growing up in Birstall was cool because it was such a small community. Everybody happened to live in town. We didn't really have many farm kids, so we'd often just get the keys to the arena or the gym at night, and the advantages it gave me to be able to put in that extra amount of time in every sport and stuff like that made me such a stronger athlete and made me a better person. I think if you can diversify, especially as a kid, and learn all these different sports, it just helps you in the long run. I loved hockey because I like the gritty dirtiness of it. And I played hockey from when I was probably 5 or 6 or something till I got hurt. January 7th, 2004. A tractor pulling a big round bale spreader turned out in front of us as we were passing it, and we hit it at probably 100, 120K an hour. Car burst into flames. I started to put the pieces together, and I can remember everything involved in the accident. I was evaluating my decisions in my fight in that car based on the future that I was going to have wasn't the same life I had just been living. I happened to be really lucky. There happened to be a military helicopter that was doing training exercises in the area, and we heard radio calls and offered to help, I guess. And eventually when I started hearing this talk about like there's a helicopter coming, that kind of gave me like another gear, like, okay, you can fight a little bit longer, just, you know, stick with it. This helicopter's coming for you. I'll never forget it. And it's something that most people in this world are never gonna go through, the terror and the feeling and the elation and the confusion and all the emotions that I had to go through that day. I went through an 8-hour surgery on the front to patch up on my internal bleeding, another 7 or 8 hour surgery in the back to fuse some vertebrae and put some hardware in. And then I wake up and they're trying to explain it, but I already knew.
I came from a pretty athletic family, and so I had skied before. I was okay. My friend Charmaine had rented a snowboard and I was on skis, and it didn't take very long for her to decide that she wanted to go on skis and give up the snowboard, and I was like, yeah, sign me up. I fell in love with it. I was such a tomboy, and I had this awesome mullet and these hand-me-down clothes that were way too big, and I didn't really fit the mold. It was tough, and at about 12 years old, I started to take a handful of Tylenol to make myself feel better, and that's when I realized that I was dealing with depression. And from there, it was just a spiral of depression and anxiety and just not really wanting to be around. At 15, I was trying it all. You know, most of the hard drugs that you hope your child never takes. I was experimenting, and one drug that I unfortunately fell in love with was crystal meth, and that took me down a very dark path. It was tough to go through such a heavy addiction knowing that I was better than that and that wasn't what my life was going to look like, because I truly believed that I was destined for bigger things, but I was wrapped around this drug. The big turning point for me was allowing myself to just be open with my situation to the people around me and to forgive myself for the damage that I had done to my body.
I confidently said at some point, probably a week after my accident, like, hey, I'm gonna play wheelchair basketball for Team Canada. But I was naive. The first time I jumped into a chair, I had to stare at this damn chair all night, just looking at me through my dark hospital room. It's got like a backrest up to here with like a thing that holds your head, and they had to come, bring 2 people, like lift me in a little crane thing to put me in, and I'm thinking, oh my God, like, is this gonna be my life all the time? My grandpa and I we'd always had a special relationship. He was super athletic, and I think being pretty athletic from when I was young, that bonded us together. He always said it was blue collar, that he went out there and just worked that much harder than people. Right around when I got hurt, he was just diagnosed with cancer, and it kind of bonded us together that we're both in vulnerable spots. It's some tough stuff, and I think it was a huge advantage to us that we can both admit things or say things to each other that we would have never said to anyone else in the family.
I've been a water bug ever since I was 6 months old, and my coaches actually saw potential in me as a para-athlete, and that whole para world out there was unfamiliar to us. We had no idea it existed. It just made me feel like I had a spot in swimming. My first meet as a para-athlete was the aha moment for both myself and my mother. First timers at one of these meets with all people who had some type of disability. And I watched these swimmers thinking to myself, wow, they're swimming like nobody's business, and their disability doesn't have an impact.
One of the phys ed teachers at our high school also ran a track club. And he would go through to all the phys ed classes and he would kind of pick out certain athletes who would be good for his track team. I was on a day leg. I had never heard of a running prosthetic really before. So I wasn't a fast kid. I mean, I'm a good athlete. And so he never really took a look at me, but all of my friends who were mostly hockey players were picked by him and brought out to his track. So I kind of got sick of it after a while and just said, I'll be at practice later today. And before he could kind of say anything to me, I just kind of walked away and didn't give him a chance to say no. So I showed up later that day, and I don't think I really missed a practice for about the next 6 months there. I mean, I didn't even know about the Paralympics then. I was just doing it because that's what my friends were doing. They were hanging out, and I wanted to spend time with my friends, so that was how I did it. We had a kid on our team who was visually impaired, and he had actually just got back from the Pan Am Games down in Rio. Started talking to him, and my parents got talking to his parents. We kind of found out about what this whole Paralympic thing was. Got in contact with the talent development guy for Athletics Canada, Dave Gregg. He said, you know, we got a camp 3 weeks from now down in Florida for 2 weeks. If you can make it there, we'd love to have you. And that was kind of my first real introduction into the Paralympics. When I got into track, I didn't really know what events I wanted to do. I threw some javelin because I was kind of built more for throwing, and I thought, what's cooler than throwing a javelin? Early August of that year, I was at World Juniors. I got 2 silvers in the 100 and the 200 meter. So I'm enjoying it. Not taking it to that next level yet. I'm still in school. I'm still busy with all that sort of stuff, still playing hockey.
I was constantly looking for a way to make myself happy. And so I did my fitness competition, was loving the way that I looked, but realizing that I had become this very superficial person that was caring too much about how I looked and how I saw others. June 27th, 2011, I had been riding my bike almost every day. My buddy had called me, and it's probably around 7 o'clock when we decided to jump on our bikes. I, of course, having my need for speed, I figured I gotta keep up with the boys, and they opened up at the bottom of the hill. I got stuck behind a red car. And the second I got around the red car, I opened up, and I got to 120 kilometers an hour. Witnesses say that I laid down my bike, and so this 500-pound machine was pinned on top of me. I slid into the guardrail head first, did cartwheels in the air for several meters, and hit the guardrail again. Upon impact, I broke almost every bone in both my legs. I had bilateral compound tib fib fractures. I broke my pelvis, my hips, my back, my right clavicle, punctured a lung, bruised my spleen. And when I broke my right femur in 2 places, it severed my femoral artery. So I was bleeding out. This is not it. I'm not going to die today. Today is not my day. My family sat in a room for at least a day waiting to hear if I was gonna survive. It was life-changing, definitely for them, and then of course for me, when I woke up 7 days later, and once my breathing tubes are out and I could find out exactly what was going on and what had happened to me.
I have one of the best mentors anybody could ask for, Kendra Ohama. She happened to come to the hospital. We sat and talked for a couple hours, had coffee, and she said all the places she's been to in the world and all the opportunities she's had. She's my mom's age, and she's more active than most of my friends. So she really opened my eyes up. She just pointed me in the right direction, and I've been really successful ever since, and for sure, she had a big part of that.
Double jump, double double jump.
I met Jesse the first time at the Foothills Hospital. He was already in his chair. He seemed to me the type of person who really had his stuff together. And I had no doubt when I left there after talking to him that he was going to be okay.
I used to bug the physio and the guy who worked in the gym fixing chairs. I was bored, so I'd bug them all the time. Like, hey, I'm gonna go and shoot some hoops. And I'd come running back and check in every 10 minutes, and 10 minutes turned to 20 minutes sometimes, and 20 minutes turned to 30 minutes.
When he first started coming out, I was a lot faster than him. Now he's like one of the fastest members on Team Canada.
Well, I got cut 06, and then I got cut 07, and then I got cut 08. 3 years of hard work of every year, I think I got a good chance of making this team. Every year it's disappointment, that call you have to make to your parents of like, no, I suck again. And I think a lot of people give up, but I was willing to put in the countless hours and the blue collar work to be the player that I ended up being. I'd rather try and fail and be told I can't do it 10 times.
I should just let that go out of bounds.
Than look back when I'm 50 and go, I wonder if I could have done that if I'd have done it properly. Because the one thing we can't get back in life is time.
They started this ICU journal, and it's actually recommended for most families in the ICU. All my siblings got to write in it. My brother and I have just never really had a close relationship due to the fact that, I lived with him for a bit when I was addicted to drugs and kind of burned those bridges. And for him to write in there was actually pretty incredible. And not just to write, I hope you get better soon and you're strong. It was really incredible to think that he had this vision for me. They would constantly write in this journal, you are the person to get through this in the family. And I didn't think my family saw me as that. I didn't think my family saw me as strong.
Ready, go. Okay, back. Ready, go.
It was Karen Farney. She was one of my first coaches when I was 11 years old, and she told me that she would be watching me at a Paralympic Games, and I did not believe her. National coach Craig McCord phoned my mother on her cell saying, would Morgan like to join us as part of the world team traveling to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil? To hear that coming from the national coach saying, Morgan has a spot on our team, I was just shocked and thrilled and excited for what the future held for my career. When I first started, I started swimming as fun to get out of physiotherapy. I didn't think I would reach that high of a level of swimming.
Next one, we're going to right, to left. There you go, to right, to left. To right, to left.
I was new to this whole experience and did not know what I was doing. And so London was kind of that opportunity for me to see what it was like on an international stage racing the best swimmers in the world. Coach Karen telling me, I'm gonna be watching you at your first Paralympic Games. Well, she wasn't lying. Her and Alana, another one of my first coaches, took it upon themselves to book a flight to London, purchase tickets to my 50 free event, and watch me swim. Again, that's a moment that I'll never forget.
Going into London, I was happy to just get there, which I think happens with a lot of athletes when they're young. I was really quite happy that I chose to do all three events, the 100, 200, and javelin. The thing is, at a competition like that, the 100 and the 200, as soon as the heat before you leaves the blocks, you go out, you set up your blocks. You probably have 5 minutes to set up your blocks, run out a couple times, go back, you get introduced, and then you're immediately into the blocks. You're on the race, you're ushered off the track. So there's no real time to look around and kind of enjoy and experience what's going on around you. Whereas for javelin, you go out, every throw is kind of a 3-minute process. So each person's getting 3 to 6 throws. You're out on the field for at least 2 hours, so you can kind of sit down and look up and enjoy it and kind of get the whole experience of it. In London and in Lyon, I ranked higher and finished better in javelin than I had in the 100 or the 200. So I'm gonna focus on just javelin.
We took silver in Beijing. We didn't do well in 2010 World Championships. we're not maybe the top team around anymore, and other teams are catching up. It shows how tight the world is now in our sport. Punched our ticket to London. It's a different feel at the big show when you're sitting there on the line and hearing your national anthem and glancing around, and you can see your parents' faces up there, and like, I remember the look in my dad's face when he's looking down and like, knowing that if you'd have said when I was 19 or the day before I got hurt, hey, a few years from now, you're gonna be in London watching your son play a gold medal match in a sold out arena. It was pretty cool, and you could tell, like, the look he was looking down, like, he was just beaming ear to ear, right?
Way to stop that.
I was on the bench at the very end of the game, and I'm fine once I get on the court. Everything becomes instinct. You practiced everything 1,000 times. Being down 4 or 6 or whatever it was at halftime, and like, uh-oh, what's gonna happen here? And Australia had a really good team, and we edged them out and got some revenge for them beating us in Beijing. It was a cool feeling to be on top, knowing that today you are the best in the world.
When I was in the hospital, it wasn't very long after I found out that my leg was amputated above the knee, I decided that I wanted to become a Paralympian and a one-legged fitness model. And so everyone's like, okay, you're just heavily medicated, we'll come back to this. But I never lost that vision and that dream. It was always there in the back of my mind, which got me through the really tough days. I was told one of the first things I had to do was pick a prosthetist, which is someone that would be a really big part of my journey as an amputee.
So let me take a measurement. We can get plaster all over them?
Yeah.
It's pretty durable. When I first met her, she was being stitched back together and pieced back together and still in a state of healing. Even from that first time meeting, her desire to succeed and persevere was there.
At the very beginning, I looked at Tabor and I said, I just want to look normal. What can you do to cover up this leg so that it just looks like my other leg?
We had those discussions early on where, you know, it's kind of like, well, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't matter how good it looks.
And he looks at me and he says, Michelle, let's just focus on you walking first.
So then we use this as a starting point for a diagnostic socket.
I still have contracture in that though. As my gait got better and as I moved to a computerized knee and all these different prosthetics, I started to realize that being an amputee was now who I was, and that I should never be afraid to show my medal off. If there's anything, I should be proud.
Very nice. 9-8, good.
I've come to have a very close relationship with Wendy, that I can trust her, and I find that coach-athlete relationship is very important for any athlete to have success. She is a woman that pushes me to my limit in the pool. It's that tough love that I've come to appreciate.
If you work that underwater here and you work your turn there, it should be good.
I used to have to probably work harder to get her to focus when she first came on board. Now she pushes herself much more than I have to give her the push, so I don't think she's hit her potential yet.
So my roommate Colleen had met Greg Westlake years before out on a girls' night, and she didn't know right away that he was missing both of his feet. Throughout the time that they knew each other, he got into sledge hockey and he became captain of the Canadian sledge hockey team. So she reached out to him, and right away he's like, yeah, I'll come see her. We talked about the Paralympics and my dream of being a Paralympian. He was pretty honest and blunt. He said, Michelle, it's probably gonna take you 5 years. But that dream was created. It just fueled my fire. And so 2.5 years later, I'm at the Sochi Paralympics, and I'm standing next to Greg Westlake as we're about to walk into opening ceremonies. And he looks over at me and he said, you know, Michelle, I knew that you were gonna do this, but I just didn't think it was gonna be this fast. I was making that bedside dream of being a Paralympian a reality, and realizing that, you know, there is a world for me as an amputee. I believe that going to the Sochi Games gave me almost every tool needed in order to do well for the 2018 games.
The 2015 Para-Pan Am Games in Toronto was an eye-opening experience for me. It was my very first time representing Canada in Canada. Having that home crowd, knowing that those screams are meant for you to touch the wall first, and lit a fire in me to achieve the results that I did, which was gold in 50 free and 400 free within an hour of each other, and second in the 100 free. Something about being on home soil, that's a highlight in my career. It's very unusual for a swimmer to be very good at both the 50 and the 400. Usually you have a specialty in one or the other. One needs speed and the other needs your body to have stamina. I cried in my very first 400 and I still fight back tears today in the 400. It's an event that is kind of a love-hate relationship. I prefer the 50 free because you get in, you get out, and you're done.
I always knew that going overseas and playing professionally was an option. I just never really thought it's something I wanted.
That was the best moments of my life, because when have players in Canada ever been given a chance to play professionally in a league? It's a no-brainer. Jazzy was also like a leader there as well, so it was pretty great to be able to play with him at that level.
1, 2, 3.
We had the most hardcore fans in the league. They've got these wicked drums and just go to town on them. So we would actually include the fans and start like holding up numbers, and they would do the different drum beats, experimenting with like how to get them involved and not drown out of me like screaming run play 2 when nobody can hear me. So it's kind of cool that now they felt like the sixth man, and our seasons were about 15 months a season put into a year. At the time I was still playing for Team Alberta. I'd fly back and play nationals for them after my season ended. I was still playing Team Canada, and I was playing for my German professional team. You know, you're mentally exhausted. It burnt me out from the sport a little bit, but it was also pretty cool that you're getting to see a ton of the world.
I was in this big transformation in my kind of sporting career of going from focusing on mainly sprints to now focusing on javelin and throws. It was a hard time for me. After Para-Pan Ams in Guadalajara, where I was able to get bronze in javelin and the 200 going into the same event in 2015, I was feeling really confident. Honestly, I was probably feeling cocky more than anything. And then I show up to the event and there's 2 new athletes who I'd never seen before. You get 2 warm-ups before competition starts, and my warm-ups aren't going well. The guy from Trinidad steps up and stands at the end of the runway, no run-up, no nothing, leans back and throws the javelin like I've never seen anyone throw it in my entire life. So I'm walking in and start to freak out a little bit. Competition starts, my first 2 or 3 throws aren't going well. Everything technically is falling apart for me, and I ended up finishing 4th place. We had World Championships in November in Doha, in the Middle East. And so I'm still trying to get over this Pan Am fiasco. I showed up and had the worst competition I've probably ever had. I think I finished 16th. To finish and know that there's so much more there, and you just couldn't tap into it. I mean, it was heartbreaking. I felt like I disappointed everyone so much. I had to go back and I had to reset. I knew that there was more there. There'd always been more there. So it's just a matter of fact of putting everything together. We got to Rio and we were training and everything was going really well. I'm out there and I do a first practice throw. Really happy with it. At that point, it would have been a personal best for me. However, when I came down, I busted one of the bolts on the back of my prosthetic. So I'm starting to come up in the order. I'm tightening as much as I can, start stripping the bolt, so I gotta stop. So it comes around and I go up to throw, and at this point I'm still pretty hesitant going on my leg. I don't know what's gonna happen. Go up, throw, it's a solid throw. It's nothing great. Comes around again. Either it's gonna be a good throw and it's gonna hold up, or I'm gonna throw and it's gonna bust off and it's gonna be a good clip for the next however many years. Those are my two options. So I said, what the hell, go for it. Went out and had a really good throw. Personal best, moved myself from 12th place to 6th place, which got me my extra 3 throws, which is what I was looking for. There's a guy in first, 2nd place to 8th place. I think we were in with about 1.5 meters, everyone. So it's so tight. I went out and I hit one. I knew it felt good, but I don't know how far it went. So I'm sitting there, I'm doing the math. One more guy throws. If he doesn't throw well, I'm guaranteed a medal. He throws it, not a good throw. I heard my name announced, and then I heard 55, 56, and then 2nd place. I'm completely overcome with emotion. They threw me the flag. I had the flag around my shoulders. There's very few, if any, feelings better than that in the world.
Way up, faster. Slower up.
I wanted to get back on the stage after the Paralympics. And so November 2014, I walked the stage again. And it was a completely different experience from the first. Covered in scars, missing a leg with this patchy tan, I did it completely content with who I was. I didn't walk the stage to do it for anybody else. I walked the stage to do it for myself the second time.
Rio was different than London because I was a different athlete altogether. I learned to cherish it more as an older athlete, and representing Canada my first time.
Nice strong pull.
I didn't really realize it at the time, how much it meant.
Push, push, push. Up, 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 up. Nice job.
Because not many people get that opportunity, and I just really was more grateful for that experience. At this point in my career, to not take anything for granted, and every single time that I wear the maple leaf, I just learned to hold it close to my heart. Part of having competitors at the top level beside me, it just pushes me even harder. And to have that camaraderie and such close friendship with the Canadians on my team, that's what I continue to swim for.
We do live in the greatest country in the world, if you ask me, with the greatest people in the world. Not only are you representing the country, but you're representing the people that live in the country. And I think that's a bigger thing to me.
Representing my country has meant everything. We used to have these videos that superimpose your heart rate data with your gameplay footage. And that's the feeling. I was trying to capture that the rest of my career. Every game I went into, I tried to give myself that nervous butterflies, heart racing, like, oh, I don't know if we're gonna win or lose, like all that pressure feeling. I thrive under that, and I love the feeling that it gives you. And I think playing for Team Canada made it a lot easier to do. That as soon as you throw on the red and white, pretty cool feeling to have that Canada across your back and know that you're representing your country, and most people would never get a chance to do this.
I would be lying to you if I said that swimming every single day was all rainbows and butterflies. I've had those moments where I didn't want to get out of bed. I was frustrated with myself. I think every athlete has those moments, and just to push myself beyond those times and just to remind myself why I started swimming in the first place. There's no way I could do this alone. My successes are not on me, they're on everybody around me. My friends, my family, my coaches. Every single person that has been behind me for the past 12 years has made an impact on my life, and I wouldn't be where I am today without the help of every single person. I think it's very important to take a step back in my busy life and realize what others have sacrificed to help me get to where I am.
Down. Good. Relax.
The Paralympics are a lot different from the Olympics because most of us come into sport post-accident or injury or amputation. And so a lot of us don't understand what it takes to be high-performance athletes, myself included.
Some resistance.
The first 3 seasons were difficult for me because I didn't really understand my prosthetic leg. And then Mark Fawcett came along, my coach, who's a legend in the snowboard world, and he was like, let's try this and let's try that. And all of a sudden, the knee started working the way it was supposed to, and my confidence, it just skyrocketed. I started getting faster. We're somewhere in Europe, and the US coach looks at me and he says, you know, Michelle, you used to really suck. He's like, but now you're fast. And so all of a sudden, I am the person to beat.
Michelle's proven that you can come from being as broken as she was to such a high level of success. Since I've seen her success, I've been able to help inspire other people to say, just give it a shot.
I've had to miss so many things because of basketball. You're on the road nonstop. It's pretty hard to have a real relationship with anybody, but I'm living out of a suitcase. I almost had to miss my brother's wedding this year because we were crazy lead up to Rio. I think the most challenging thing with playing at that much basketball was probably just a balance of life. I realized I needed to find things like tennis and skiing and things like that to just get my mind off of basketball all the time. Balance and happiness in life, it goes a long ways into making you a better player.
One of the coaches at Cascade reached out to me. There's a 7-year-old girl with cerebral palsy, and she was really excited to meet you. You've inspired her without even meeting her yet. She reminds me of myself. It just makes me so happy that I can assist somebody and foster that love for a sport. I have been attending university. I am in the Bachelor of Child Studies program. I really strive to motivate the younger generations to find something they love, have fun doing it, and stick to it. The Children's Hospital staff, they made such a positive impact, huge on my life, and it would mean so much to me. It would be so rewarding to be able to do the same thing.
For me, I get a lot out of giving back to the disabled community now, and I'd argue wheelchair basketball and maybe skiing are two of the only things that can make people feel completely on the same playing field. I'd like to go to an X Games for skiing one day. Ever since I was like 14, I always thought like X Games was like the pinnacle of coolness. And now there's border cross for sit skis, and that's right up my alley. There's a little bit of rubbing, a little bit of racing. For me, the speed, I think skiing just gives you that much more freedom. Suddenly I'm not locked down, stuck in this chair. I can go off and I can go launch it over a giant jump and, land 20 feet down the hill too.
I have a whole lot more respect for any coach that I've had in the past, because I can guarantee that I was just as much trouble as these kids were. And I still remember my coaches growing up and just kind of the lessons that they taught me. And so I'm just trying to pass that on to these kids.
Guys, we can't leave too early, right? 2 guys along the half boards, we can't have our 2 defensive guys there.
Parasports have done so much for me. If I try and introduce it to as many people as possible, I wish that someone had kind of shown me a little bit of the way, just to know that that opportunity's there.
And this is where we can get creative. This is where we can have, because the flow of players is coming from the former strong side onto the weak side, right? Maybe we have guys going to the net. Maybe we don't necessarily have to score on this shot, right?
As much time as I can spend, I want to be around kids, especially young kids. to show them, whether it's able-bodied or not, just to show them that these are the opportunities that you can create for yourself.
Before my accident, I was shallow. Yeah, I was a good person. I always had good intentions, but I always saw myself as a weak person and a victim. And then the accident happened, and I woke up, and just like that, I changed. My whole life did a complete 180. It has nothing to do with how I look. It has everything to do with who I am as a person.
I have a motto that I live by. The only disability in life is a bad attitude. And I think the most important thing for me at that young age was to have fun. As long as you love what you do, continue with it and see where you can go. So I hope by sharing my story, whether it's one person, my story has reached out to them in a way that has them thinking, hey, maybe I can go out and try sport. That's our goal, is to close the gap between able-bodied and para, and maybe one day have an Olympic medal hold the same meaning as a Paralympic medal. Each day that passes and each day that the movement grows is a day closer to having that equality that we're looking for.
Wheelchair basketball is a cool thing that mostly anybody can play it. Wheelchair is like wearing skates. It's a piece of equipment. And that's the coolest thing to me about that sport, is that just about anybody can jump in and try it. I would like to see wheelchair basketball opened up completely to anybody. You'd be curious to see how many more people we can get involved in the sport then, because we were the first people to let able-bodied players play. Now, something like 40–50% of the people who play in Canada have no disability. You could play wheelchair basketball pretty competitively to a reasonably old age. I'd like to still think that I could be 60 out there and still be faster than some of these young little whippersnappers wheeling around, still playing and smashing and fouling out of every game and talking trash to the young kids. It'd be great if I was.